the baby is sleeping, and I just want to say hi and say welcome to my birth story. What you're about to hear is a positive home birth experience of a first-time mom. And I'll start by just saying how I got comfortable and confident enough to choose home birth. There were a number of factors, and most of them included research and just feeling really empowered by what I was seeing and studying outcomes and realizing that home birth is just as safe, if not safer, than a hospital birth for people who are low risk and are healthy. And that was me. I was healthy, my baby was healthy, I was low risk, and we just felt really good about it after we did a bunch of research. So we read a couple books and we met with a couple of providers. We chose Andrea at Ocean Midwives, who was our midwife and who was just totally amazing. And I think I chose her around 12 weeks. I like to do things fast. So we also got an in-network exception for her so that we could get insurance coverage, and which was really amazing. We have Anthem Blue Cross, and you can request an in-network exception for any provider, for any service. The basic premise is that you just petition to like why you need this service, and when you consider how much a hospital birth is, I don't even know, probably more than $20,000. And Andrea's midwifery services are less than $6,000. From the insurance company's perspective, they save a lot of money. So we went that route and got it covered by insurance, and it was really amazing. One of the really great things about midwifery care is that we planned for a home birth. My midwives would have gone to a birth center with me, or they would have gone to a hospital with me had we needed to transfer or had I became high risk later in my pregnancy. So I just felt really, really great about everything. I felt at peace. I felt I was being treated as a whole being. My midwife appointments prenatally were an hour to an hour and a half long every time. No kidding. And my mental health would be assessed, my mental state. We would talk about plans. We would just talk about life in general and health, just so many aspects of health. And I don't know if you get that in a typical OB practice, but I just felt so lucky to experience midwifery care my first go around. So let's get into the actual birth story. I had been having Braxton Hicks since probably 12 weeks of pregnancy, which is so crazy, but that was my experience. So when I started contracting around like week 38, like the latter part of week 38, I didn't think they were labor contractions. I thought they were just Braxton Hicks. So I'll just say that as an aside. So it was in February. The baby was actually born on February 6th. So 3 days prior to the birth, I remember it was a Monday and I napped all day. I was so exhausted. And when I say napped all day, I mean like coming out to the kitchen, finding food, going back to bed, eating it, and then falling asleep and repeating that cycle. And that night I made it out to go see my friend and her family down the street. And I remember telling them, okay, tonight is a new moon. I'm feeling weird. I'm feeling like we're gonna have a baby tonight. And just kind of like laughing about that feeling, just something is different. And I woke up on Tuesday, didn't have a baby. I mean, I had a baby on the inside, didn't have a baby on the outside. And I also napped and ate for most of the day. Just cannot explain the level of exhaustion that I had. And my partner, Anthony, came home early that day and he said, let's go for a walk. Let's get out of the house. And I'm thinking, okay, let's go for a walk. We went to Liberty Station and we walked around quite a bit. I was definitely having tightenings every 20 minutes or so, but they weren't painful. I just remember them feeling like pressure, and I remember feeling out of breath. So when they would come, I would sit down in the middle of our walk, find a bench and sit down. which looking back, I'm like, that might have been labor. But at the time I was like, oh, these are just Braxton Hicks. I'm just so pregnant. I'm only 30. I remember thinking like I'm only 38 weeks, like I'm 39 weeks tomorrow. So I'm a first time mom. I'll probably go to 42 weeks. I remember that, you know, as a first time mom, you plan to go to 42 weeks. But anyways, so that night after our walk, we came home, and I don't remember too much about the night, just that I told Anthony I need to go to bed. And I went into our bedroom. I watched Harry Potter, which is like my favorite movie to watch when I'm feeling under the weather because it's so comforting to me. And I came out to get food like 6 or 7 times. And I remember telling Anthony, I am a bottomless pit. I cannot eat enough. And Anthony was binge watching Netflix, some show. And I remember coming out right before I officially went to bed, I don't know, like around 7 or 8. And I said, I don't remember what was on your list to do before I gave birth, but you should do that now. And he kind of just looked at me and laughed. And I said, also, do you want to have sex one last time before the baby comes? And he also looked at me and laughed because I'm like in labor but don't know it. And he was like, good night, I love you. So I said good night, went to bed, and I slept really deeply. And that had not been my experience for the rest of the pregnancy. I just had such a bad time sleeping, but that night I just slept like a dream, and I didn't dream at all, actually. And I didn't wake up. It was then Wednesday morning, February 6th, and I woke up with a start. It was exactly 3:00 a.m. and I thought to myself, if I don't stand up, I'm going to pee myself. So I shot out of bed, you know, like rolled over and stood up as a very pregnant person can do. And my water just broke. It just popped like Hollywood style all over the floor, all over my underwear and pants. And I waddled to the bathroom. And at that time, as I'm waddling, I say, Anthony, my water just broke. And he's like, oh my gosh, what? And I go to sit on the toilet, and it's just like, it keeps dripping. It does have like this theatrical pop sometimes, but then it just continues to drip. So I'm sitting there on the toilet like, okay, so we've popped water, and I kind of touched my belly, which felt like an overinflated water balloon before, but it felt so small, like it had all just deflated. And I was touching my soft belly thinking, whoa, this is a really weird feeling. And Anthony turned on the light and cleaned up the water for me, the trail of water. And we kind of looked at each other and said, it's really early. We should go back to bed. These contractions aren't a thing. Like, they're only every 20 minutes and they're not painful. And so we turned out the light. I tried to lay down. It felt so uncomfortable to lay down. There was so much stomach tightness that I just couldn't. There was no way that I was going to be able to lay down. So we just kind of hung out in bed for a while. I ate a banana and I had some water. And I think at that point, I was having contractions every 20 minutes. I wasn't ready to call the midwives because they weren't intense. I was still able to talk through them. We kind of just hung out for a while, you know, just kind of chatting and trying to sleep. And around 5 o'clock, Anthony and I decided, let's get the bed ready for this home birth. When you have a home birth, you need to put plastic on the bed, like under the sheets and also under the pillowcases, just so you don't ruin anything, because you don't know where you're going to give birth or what fluids are going to be where. So as Anthony and I started, or actually I should just say Anthony started to get the bed ready, I asked him to bring the rocker in, like the rocking chair. So I was sitting on that, rocking through contractions, and I remember they started to get, like, in that hour period that it took us to make the bed, I remember the contractions getting a little bit more intense, and I would go to the bathroom every time, like sit on the toilet for every contraction, because I just had so much poo that was coming out as my body was cleansing itself for labor. And then I remember I started turning on my hypnobirthing tracks for each contraction, just to get through them, to give me something to focus on. And then when the hypnobirth track started to annoy me, I needed Anthony to be there. And this is why it took an hour to make the bed, because every contraction I was having, I needed Anthony to like physically be touching me. Like I either needed to have my arms wrapped around his waist or have him touching my hips, like pressing on them, counter pressure. And at some point they got pretty intense and I thought I should text my sister and tell her to come over. So I remember looking at my phone, trying to text her, and it took so much concentration and focus that all I could manage to type was "in labor." That's all. I think she wishes I said like, "come over now," but I just said "in labor." And then I'm kind of like on all fours contracting and I start pushing. Not like actually like pushing, but my body begins to bear down without me having a say in it. And at that point, me and Anthony look at each other and we're like, we should call the midwives, which I should have called them way earlier. But anyways, we called them at that point. It was like 6 o'clock that we called them. And I remember I'm on all fours, contracting, pushing, and Anthony's on the phone with Andrea saying, oh yeah, we're in labor, water broke at 3, giving Andrea all the stats. And I just remember yelling on the phone saying, tell her I'm pushing, tell her I'm pushing. And I think she heard me contract at that point and thought, okay, or actually said out loud, okay, we're gonna be there as fast as we can. And I remember just like ripping off the rest of my clothes at that point. I think I was only wearing a bralette because my water had broken on my clothes and then I was wearing a bralette. So I ripped that off because I was getting sweaty. It was just so hot, such an athletic event. And I jumped in the shower and I was like alternating the water between hot and cold. I remember just like pushing all the shampoos off the rack and putting my arms on the rack and the head, like my forehead, and just swaying back and forth and just getting into the zone. And it was like 20 minutes between the time we had texted my sister, called the midwives, and that everyone arrived. But I remember in that 20-minute time period, because my body was bearing down and everything felt so intense so quickly, I just kept asking Anthony, where is my sister? Where are the midwives? When is everyone getting there? And poor guy, he's calling everyone on the phone like, hey, things are like really intense. So it was like 6:20, 6:30 by the time everyone arrived. And I think the midwives just saw me and kind of knew, okay, this girl's far along. And things started happening. The birth pool started getting set up. My midwives were allowing me to alternate between the shower and the toilet between contractions and just remain pretty comfortable and in the zone, and just supporting me through each contraction by helping me breathe. And at that point, the birth pool is getting ready, and Andrea had been there maybe 30 minutes, and then she said, Natalie, we need to check you. And I was in the shower at that time and I was like, I'm not moving. There's no way that I can move. I felt so gigantic. I felt so under pressure. I felt so much intensity that I just had a hard time like listening to people or understanding them. And so I was really grateful for my midwife, Andrea, who kind of took charge and just said, okay, well, right now you're not having a contraction. This is a good time to move. If you don't move now, you're going to have to move while you're having a contraction, and that's going to be much worse. And so I said, okay. So I took the 3 steps from the shower to the bed that I needed to take, and Andrea checked me, and she either said I was like fully dilated or that I was dilated just with a slight cervical lip. I don't remember exactly, but I remember hearing that and thinking, oh, thank God, like this is super intense, but I'm like very close to the finish line. And so at that point they told me, okay, the birth pool is ready, which my sister and Anthony and the midwives had set up / like assisting me. It's so foggy, I really don't remember, but they say, oh, the birth pool's ready, and I'm looking at them like, I'm not moving. I'm now laying on this bed. And Andrea says to me, you wanted a water birth. It's going to make everything easier. Let's get you there. And I think I just succumbed to her because I needed direction. I needed guidance and I needed support. So with her being that figure that was strong and telling me what I needed to do, I was really grateful in the moment and just trusted her, which is such a great relationship to have with a care provider. So I walked down the hallway. Anthony was in front of me supporting me, or maybe he was behind me, but Carolyn was also supporting me, physically supporting me walking, because my legs were just shaking uncontrollably, and I was just going through a lot. So by that time it's 8 o'clock. So the midwives had been here for an hour and a half or so by the time I got into the birth pool. And in the birth pool, I remember being on my knees and, just still contracting. And I remember feeling something between my legs to the point where I thought, I can't close my legs. And I kept trying to open them wider and wider while I was on my knees in the birth pool. I realized that was now a head, but at the time I didn't realize it was a head. And I think at some point I got on my back so that the midwives could just, monitor the fetal heart rate and also like see what was going on. So I was kind of on my side or back, and at some point, and like I'm still having the urge to push, but I was able to more so breathe through it with my midwives coaching me. So I wasn't actively pushing the entire time in the birth pool. I remember at one point, everything is just so calm and so serene, and I don't really know how far along I am or what's going on, but I don't really care because I'm just contracting, zoning out, relaxing, being coached how to breathe. And my sister says to Andrea, like, I see a head. And Andrea's like, Amanda's like, the head is coming out. And so at that point, everyone's like, oh, yay, there's a head. Like, no panic, no rush, just, oh, yay, like, let's get the show on the road. And so at that point, when the head was coming out, they were actually coaching me to push. And yeah, so I was getting coached to push. I have to sneeze. So I was getting coached to push through the contractions and also helped to breathe during the contractions because I would get really breathy like that when you really should be breathing in deeply and out deeply. So my midwife student / doula, Carolyn, was just helping me breathe through everything, which was, I can't even tell you how amazing that was. And I just remember smelling her, and I was just, like, you smell so good. I feel so safe. And like, I trust you. Just tell me what to do. And then in between the contractions, they would just tell me to relax. And I truly think I made the most progress with getting him like closer and closer to coming out when I truly just like went limp body in between contractions. And then at one point, it was like right before or right around 9 a.m. I don't know how long I'd been pushing, but I do remember I had maybe like 20 contractions, and every contraction the midwives would be like, oh, just one more. And I totally believed them. That got me through to the next contraction, but it wasn't one more, it was like 20 more. And so then when the head was actually coming out, like when the baby was crowning, he would like come out but then go back in when I would relax, which was okay. That's what you're supposed to do. Your vagina is supposed to slowly stretch to get ready to pass this 10-pound potato. And that was good. It was took a while. It was really intense. I don't remember it being painful. I remember needing to concentrate with every single cell in my body on the baby. I remember not wanting to touch the baby's head and not wanting to see the mirror of the baby because it's like your vagina is like so soft and squishy, and then the baby's head is so hard and the hair is all matted. So I did reach down at their suggestion, touch it, and kind of like pulled my fingers up like, ugh, didn't like that. But he started to really crown, and he stayed. So that was like the actual crowning. And my midwives just told me to relax. And then that was a moment that I just really had to breathe deeply. There was a lot of stretching and a lot of pressure. I didn't have time to think about it being painful because it was just so intense. And I knew that I needed every part of myself to just focus on getting the baby out, that I don't remember feeling pain. Just super intense pressure and stretching. And then at the next contraction, he came out, and Elmira caught him and Anthony caught him together, and they placed him on my chest, and I didn't know if he was a boy or a girl. So I immediately grabbed him and held him up like Lion King, and I saw his big balls, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a boy. And I didn't cry. Like I felt positive emotion. I was excited, but I didn't cry because it was just so intense. I was pretty exhausted, and I was just looking at him like, oh my gosh, you're a little potato that I created. Like I already loved him. I was like, you're beautiful. And Anthony held me and held the baby like with me, and it was just really sweet. And I remember Andrea telling me like, keep the baby warm, like put the baby in the water. And I was like, what? I didn't understand what anyone was saying to me. I felt high, super high. And at one point she like came over and like put the baby lower in the water with his head on my breast, and she helped me latch him. And then when it was finally time for us to get out of the pool, I didn't want to deliver the placenta in the pool, so it was time for us to get out. And it was really funny. My sister had never held a baby before, and my midwife was like, okay, Amanda, hold the baby. So Amanda like cradled the baby's head in the pool as he kind of like did a back float, which is just so sweet. Like she cradled his head and his shoulders so he would stay warm in the water. It was tricky because he was attached to me, so I needed him to be supported so I could stand up. And Anthony and my midwives helped me stand up, and then I don't remember if they gave me the baby to hold and all supported me at that point, but we walked down the hallway to our bedroom, and I laid in bed and just held the baby and was like, oh my gosh, everything is great. Like that wasn't even that hard. And my sister's looking at me like, did we just have the same experience? But truly, I was like, that was magical. Like that was just so intense. And I just like loved every second of it. And I remember baby latched, and Andrea just said to me like, it's time for the placenta to come out. And I don't know how she knew that. She's just a baby whisperer. And she at that point just like told me to push, and I don't remember if I had a contraction or not, but told me to push, and the placenta just came out in a plop. Like, do not be worried if you're about to have a baby. Do not be worried about the placenta. Like, you literally just pushed a 10-pound potato out, and the placenta is like a bag of goo. Like, don't worry about it. So the placenta came out very easily. They put it in a casserole dish, and like the casserole dish was next to me, and the baby was attached to the placenta, and I was holding him and just getting skin to skin. And we just relaxed. The midwives left Anthony and I with the baby. So we had like time as a little family. And then the midwives came out to the kitchen to eat, scrounge up some food. And my sister went and got everyone coffee, which was so sweet. And after that, my sister spent some time with me and Anthony and the baby, and it was just like a really sweet moment. And we told her what like the name of the baby was, which is Braiden. And yeah, it was just so sweet and relaxed and just like such a beautiful time. I just have such fond memories of all of that. And once everyone left me alone in the room to come out here to take care of the birth pool and things, I FaceTimed my mom and asked her if she'd come over. And my mom was on her way over. And at that point, the midwives kind of assessed my vagina, which was so painful compared to the birth. They were like poking around, seeing if anything tore, and I did have a minor tear, so they stitched that up. They gave me a shot of painkiller to numb me, and they just stitched me up right on the bed, which is really great when you think about it as a mom. Like, it's just so nice to be in the comfort of your own home and your own space. I'm so grateful for that. But anyways, they stitched me up, which wasn't really painful because I had had a shot, but I could feel the tension and the pressure, and everything is so sore down there, so that wasn't my most fun experience. And then my mom came over, and Anthony cut the baby's cord, and I remember the first time I cried was when Anthony had taken the baby. Like, it was his turn to do skin to skin with the baby, because my midwives needed me to get up and use the restroom just to make sure everything was not going to fall out. And I remember like looking at Anthony holding the baby, and I just started crying. I was like, that's so beautiful. And my midwife's just like hugging me, and she's like, you did so great. You're such a warrior. That was a really special moment. And then the baby got weighed, he got measured, he got his checkup. Our midwives hung out a long time, and they just made sure that we knew like basics of baby care, like, okay, this is how you feed him, like this is how you put a diaper on, like, you know, just all these really basic things, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And they left us at probably like 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. So the birth happened at 9 a.m., the actual birth, and they were there for 6 hours. And the really nice thing about midwifery care is we had home visits, so they were coming over the next morning. So they left us at 3, and I think they came over at like 7 the next morning, like 7 or 9, which was just so nice. The care we had was so nice. But anyways, yeah, so then our parents came and we had a baby. And yeah, it was that easy. And I'm really grateful for my birth experience, and I hope that it's inspiring for people who have fear surrounding birth or who aren't sure what to expect. I hope this helps in some way to normalize birth and also normalize home birth. Thanks for listening.